Hey you guys, welcome to this video. We are going to be going over the 3 levels of conversion tracking. Let's jump in. The first level of conversion tracking is the easiest, and basically it comes down to only tracking page views. So while it's the easiest, it's also the most unreliable in terms of ensuring your data quality. For example, if you're tracking a purchase event based on a page view, then that purchase event could be triggered multiple times if the person refreshes their browser, visits the page again, maybe they bookmarked it and come back to it, or any other way that they view that page in the future that's more than just the one time after they create the purchase or they do the purchase. So while page view tracking is the easiest, it's the quickest to get set up, it also has kind of that downfall where people could trigger it multiple times. The level 2, and this is one of the most common that we see and work with still, is intermediate, and it's where you are triggering different events based on Google Tag Manager. So when events are pushed into the data layer, then you are triggering your different events. That could be a purchase on a purchase data layer event that gets sent, and then your tags fire off that trigger and send the data to everywhere it needs to go for that one particular event. Now you can add additional logic, like maybe that purchase event is only pushed into the data layer the very first time that someone makes a purchase. And that's a really great way of ensuring that you have better data quality. Or you can use Google Tag Manager to add additional conditions for that purchase event. Maybe they had to have come from a certain referring page, and you can add that as a condition in GTM to only trigger that event when they land on the page. There's a purchase event, but they came from somewhere else. So that's an option. And the last level is level 3, which is the hardest to implement right now, which is server to server tracking. Now there are some tools that make this, pretty easy to do. And there's other tools that get more involved, but at the end of the day, it's a bit more advanced topic because it is dealing with servers and you're dealing with server to server connections. This one, however, is the most kind of reliable and is one of the best solutions to do in some cases. So let's jump in. Let's see how we would set up level 1 tracking with Facebook, Google Analytics 4, and Google Ads. Let's jump in with Facebook. With Facebook, basically what it comes down to is we're going to create a custom conversion. So 2 ways we can get there. We can go add events, build your own event, or in the top right from we're in events manager, we can go create custom conversion. Let's call this our custom purchase event, level 1 tracking demo. Choose your pixel, choose the page view or all URL traffic event, and then we need to define what is the rule of when we would trigger this custom conversion. To do that, let's actually go visit our site, and I'm going to do it in debug view so we can get through the entire page. And also I want this to show up in Google Analytics 4 as we run through that test. So let's quickly do a purchase, place the order. All right, so we can see in our URL that it contains, the demo side with checkout and order received. So this is what I am going to grab. So let's come back to Events Manager. URL contains that, and I actually don't want to include the HTTPS. There we go. So when the URL contains that, count it as a custom conversion, and we could even give it a value. Every time this page loads, it counts for $100. And that's where it gets a bit tricky, right? Because if someone keeps reloading the page, then it's going to have a really high conversion value. But it is the easiest to set up. So there we are. We have now set up our custom conversion to track those different page views. That page loads based on the page URL. Okay, let's look at Google Analytics 4. How would we do this in Google Analytics 4? What we're going to want to do is go to Configure, and then under Events, Create Event. We're going to create event. We're going to call this our custom event. I would always prefix this with something like C or custom, or just something so you know that it was made from the interface from inside the app and not an event that was triggered outside the app. That way you know exactly where to go if you're debugging or troubleshooting that one particular event. So let's call this is our custom purchase event. So custom with purchase, and then when do we want to fire this? Well, we want to do it when the event name equals page view, because that's what the GA4 page view event is, page_view. And when the page location, because that's the URL, contains, and paste in our URL just like that. So when it is a page view event and the URL contains our order received page, then we want to fire our custom purchase event just like that. So let's go ahead and hit create. There we can see all of our custom events. And to test this, let's go to debug view, and we can see the last purchase I just made. So there are, standard events being passed in. But what I would expect is if we come back and we reload this page without doing any additional configuration in Google Tag Manager or on the website, inside of GA4 debug, I would expect to see a new event in this timeline that is the C_purchase or custom purchase event to show up. So let's give Google Analytics 4 debug view a second to catch up, and there it is. So we have our page view event here. And if we look at the page location, we can see that it does indeed contain our core scale, checkout, order received bit. That was the condition. And so it did fire the custom event. So now we could turn this into a conversion by going to the conversions tab. After about 24 hours, that custom event would show up right here, and we would be able to mark it as a conversion. So without needing to change anything else, we created a new event, and it will be marked as a conversion as soon as it appears in this list, and we could just mark it as such. In Google Ads, to set up level 1 conversion tracking, all we have to do is go to Tools and Settings, Conversions, create a new conversion action. This will be on our website. It's going to ask to scan the domain, so let's put it in. And it will take just a moment for it to go through and scan this. Once it has finished scanning the page, it'll come up with a new box down here, and we can choose what type of goal we want on the website. So we're going to choose a purchase event, and we're going to do URL contains, and we're going to put in the full URL here. So HTTPS, the URL just like that, and hit add. So it is going to be triggered on page load, a purchase event, and we will hit save and continue. There we go. And that is all set up. So now if we hit finish, it'll take us back and we'll see our conversion action here, which will be set up to fire on those different page views. So if we come back and look at those different level 1 conversion tracking methods, we set it up inside each one of the apps. We didn't have to modify anything on the websites as long as the base codes were there. So as long as the Facebook base pixel, as long as Google Analytics 4 G tag is there, and as long as the Google Ads G tag is there as well, we can set up level 1 tracking without any additional configurations on the actual website itself. To take it one step further and to be able to, one, define the triggers a little bit better using Google Tag Manager, we can add in different conditions. Maybe they had to come from somewhere. Maybe part of the event data has to have some parameter in order to trigger the event. We can move to level 2, which is using GTM to fire all of these. Now, if we look at the current Google Tag Manager container, you'll see that there is a list of our different tags here. So we've got all of our different Facebook tags, we've got our GA4 tag set up, and then we also have our Google Ads conversion tag here that is set up as well. Now, for any of this GTM stuff to work as intended and expected, what we need to do is realize that the data layer has to already be set up on the website. So there is some previous work to this, and we won't go into it, but you need to have the data layer set up on the website to push these events and the data with those events into the data layer, which GTM can then grab, put that event and the data in its hands to work with, and then we can fire all of these different tags and things off of those events. So as an example, if we look at this purchase event here, this is the trigger saying look for custom event called purchase. And on that event, we're triggering the Facebook purchase, the GA4 purchase, and the Google Ads conversion all at the same time off of that one event. All right, let's go have a look at how this works in practice. So let's turn on debug view again. We'll visit the website and we will run through and make a purchase. All right, so here on the final thank you page, if we go and look at Tag Assistant, we will be able to see there is our custom event called purchase right there. The data layer has the information that we need. So it has an e-commerce object, it has all the different items that were purchased, as well as transaction information. And we can see that tags fired on this event was indeed our Facebook, GA4, and Google Ads conversions. So that is level 2 tracking, where we would be setting up conversion tracking using custom GTM events. The last one is server to server. So I'm actually going to show two methods here. The first one is using an automation tool. So you can do this through things like Zapier, where you can have a trigger be a purchase or something like that, and then have Zapier be the one to send the data on to whatever the other tool is. So for the example of Facebook, let's look at what this would look like if we were sending the data using Zapier and Facebook. So the trigger would be whatever. Webhooks mean that one server sent data to Zapier, and Zapier needs to catch that server data using a webhook receiver for this or trigger. Or if Zapier already has your platform, could be WooCommerce, Shopify, whatever it is, you can use that as the trigger. In my case, I just use the webhook. Once it receives the webhook, then you would have an action be send purchase event to Facebook conversions. This is Facebook's conversions API that allows it to receive server events. From here, what we basically would need to do is just set up all of these different fields. Action source would be website, choose your pixel. Event time, if you leave it blank, it'll automatically put that in for you when the Zap runs, which is nice. Event ID would be used for deduplication, specifically in Facebook's case, and you would just fill out the rest of these fields here, where you're basically mapping, user details to the event. You're mapping things about the browser if that's included in the data that you sent, custom data about how much the product was worth, what the currency was, and you can even add in the different items that were purchased if you would want to. From there, you would be able to test it and know if your event worked or not. So in this case, when we send this event to Facebook through the conversions API, it tells us that one event was received and it gives us this trace ID. So this tells us that the event was successfully sent to Facebook, and that would have been a server to server interaction. My WordPress site, WooCommerce, sent a webhook to Zapier, which then formatted all of that data and sent it on to Facebook. So we didn't have to worry about any browser interactions getting in the way or anything like that. It was a true server to server event. So that is one way to set up server to server through Facebook. You can also do it with Google Analytics and Google Ads the same way using Zapier. The other way to set up server to server interactions is with Google Tag Manager server side. So a little bit different than the client side or browser side GTM. Here is what a server container can look like. You'll notice there is a new field called clients on the left, where we can have our different clients here. We won't get into clients, but basically it's the type of data that's coming in, whether it be universal or GA4. Basically everything that we would cover would just use the GA4 client. So GA4 is the new method of sending data from the web to the server and making it reusable. So the GA4 client is very important, and off of that we have all of our different tags. So very similar, we have a conversion linker tag here, which does a lot of the same functionality that the web conversion linker tag does. We have a conversions API tag, which fires off of that GA4 client. We have a GA4 tag, which also fires off the GA4 client. And then we have our Google Ads conversion tracking tag to move that interaction from just the web to making it more of a server to server interaction, just like this. This also has a custom event trigger here called purchase, which fires off of the event name of purchase when the client is the GA4 client. Let's put this in preview mode and see how it would look to change and start using server side for these different tracking methods. So basically it is based off of the GA4 client. So we need to make sure that we have our GA4 tags set up properly. So we have our GA4 config, and in this config, we change it to say send data to our server container. So this is our custom server container URL that we would put in here. And that would tell all of the GA4 events to appear here in our server container debug. What that means now is we don't actually have to have our web conversion tag anymore. So I could actually just pause this now because we're going to move this tag into the server side environment. And what that looks like is it's already set up here. We go to our Google Ads conversion tracking and we can set up the different details here as, you know, very similar to how we had it in the web. So we need to grab our conversion ID, we need to grab our conversion label, and then we can turn these on and off based on if that data is getting sent through the GA4 purchase tag. So this data here comes from the GA4 purchase event here. So if the data is not getting sent from the web tag, it won't be usable here in the server tag. So just keep that in mind. And normally if you're sending the data following the best practices of what a GA4 event needs to look like, then you will have this data available. However, we're just going to hit save and preview. Now, if we run through this purchase one more time, then what we can see is on this thank you page, we do have our web events. So we do have our Facebook purchase, we do have our GA4 purchase, and we do have our Google Ads conversion tag. Actually, that was supposed to be off. Oh, I didn't preview the latest changes. Okay, so that would have been off had we previewed the right push preview again, but we would still have the Facebook purchase and the GA4 purchase here. Facebook, remember, that would also have been sent through Zapier. So the event happened in the browser, but it also would have been sent through the Conversions API through Zapier. So we would have had the browser and the server sending the purchase event. Now that's another video where we need to go over the event IDs and deduplication, because you can't just do that out of the box without deduplicating those events. So there is something there with Facebook and sending data server side. GA4 is now also sending data server side. So it's sending data first to our server container. And that's what this preview mode is here. We can see the data coming in through the server container. Here's the GA4 event, just that one purchase event. So from WebGTM, the one purchase event came into the server container. From the server container, it fired 3 tags. So we have our GA4 tag, which is going to send that data on to GA4. We have a Google Ads conversion tracking tag, which will now send that data through the server side to Google Ads. And it was turned off in the web, right? So we turned it off here. It is now being sent through the server. And then a third tag here is the Facebook Conversions API tag. This is just as an example to show that you can also send Facebook data to Facebook through the Conversions API or through server side using server side GTM as well. So technically in this case, we had 3 events being sent to Facebook for the purchase. We had one through the browser, one through Zapier, and one through server-side GTM. That is the 3 levels of conversion tracking for these 3 different platforms. The first one you can set up entirely within those app interfaces. So right within Facebook, right within Google Analytics 4, and right within Google Ads. Level 2, you would set up using GTM and the data layer events that would come through that you can grab, create triggers off of, and send it out using different tags. And the third level is server to server events. A lot of platforms are starting to adopt this. Right now, we know that Facebook, Google, and Google Ads has it, but we also know that other tools have server-side event capabilities as well. There's TikTok and Snapchat, I think Pinterest even, a few others also have server-to-server capabilities. So it does take a little bit more to kind of get those ones set up. But with that, you need to make sure that you have your conversion tracking set up. And here's 3 great options in order to get that done for your business. If you need help, if you want us to help look at it with you, then head on over to mediaauthentic.com and shoot us a message. All right, guys, take care.